What's going on, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to look at the way the Jets are reshaping their culture and reshaping their roster through free agency and the draft. There's a few new mock drafts out there, and I gotta tell you the truth, it only confirms what I have been saying right here on Jets Latest. Remember, a few episodes ago, I said follow the money, right? We all knew kind of where positions of need were for the Jets entering free agency. Secondary was one of them, but they had addressed that a lot in free agency with guys like Stevens, guys like Cisco. So a safety out of Georgia like Malachi Starks is no longer someone I think is a target for them in the draft. I would say the same about defensive line, right? With Nandi and others that they've gotten, Cowart from the Bears. And so I don't think that that means the Jets believe that Mason Graham, the stud D lineman out of Michigan, is going to be a target for them, or quite frankly, that he would be available for them at number 7 overall. I believe what we are seeing, if you continue to read the tea leaves, that the probable positions for the Jets to go draft are at pass catcher, whether that's wide receiver or tight end, or an offensive lineman. And it looks like some of the top draft and analysts kind of agree. So, for example, Mel Kiper out there has a new latest mock, and he has the Jets at number 7 overall, taking Tyler Warren. We have talked about Tyler Warren. He is a mismatch. He was the best tight end in the draft. He's a tight end who got Heisman Trophy votes. And remember, last year, the Jets, a lot of people thought were going to get Brock Bowers. Maybe they get their mismatched young stud tight end this year at number 7 overall. Personally, I know a lot of buzz is going that way, and Warren could wind up being a Pro Bowler for years to come. I personally am not so sure because I don't think tight end as a position is as important as the other position of need, which is offensive line. And remember, they did sign Stone Smart, although he's a developing talent, but they do also have Jeremy Ruckert on the roster, who was a third-round draft pick from Ohio State with Justin Fields. So I don't know if they're just going to put another huge asset there, although don't get me wrong, Warren could be a stud. Another kind of popular mock drafter is Daniel Jeremiah. He has the Jets taking an offensive lineman out of Missouri, Armand Membu, out of Missouri at number 7 overall. Now, I have been talking about Will Campbell out of LSU as the offensive lineman that the Jets might take in the top 10. But don't get me wrong here. Membu is another great prospect. So let me tell you a little bit about him, okay? 6'3", 315 pounds, can definitely be a tackle for this team for years to come. And remember, we took Olufoshanu last year, so maybe getting 2 young bookends for the next decade and for Justin Fields for the foreseeable future. And he was great. I mean, he graded out good at PFF, a 90.6 rating in pass blocking, an 86.6 grade in run blocking, an 87 overall. So certainly a high-end tackle. In 3 years at Missouri, he only gave up 3 sacks. Okay, so Membu has been kind of moving up draft boards. Jeremiah thinks that he is going to wind up with the Jets at number 7 overall. And I kind of think that, listen, Warren might be the kind of sexier, sizzler, spicy kind of pick, but I am not mad if they instead get a wide receiver elsewhere, get a wide receiver in the 2nd round, get a tight end in the 2nd round, decide to maybe bring Conklin back as one of the sprinkling of veterans, and really go with the position that is more valuable, in my opinion, which is the offensive line. We already have a very good interior offensive line with Tipton, with Simpson, with AVT. Remember, Fashanu, the 1st-round pick, was developing. You put him at 1 tackle. Then you put a guy like Membu or even Will Campbell at the other tackle, and you've got a good young offensive line, and you've even got depth with the signings of Josh Myers, with the signing of Okafor, right? So, like, there are other guys there already building depth, keeping it young. And another reason, I say all the time, follow the money. The Jets are hosting what I believe is an intriguing free agent wide receiver over the last couple of days, and it is Rondale Moore. Let me tell you a little bit about Rondale Moore, who, by the way, he's also visiting the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears in a kind of free agency tour. But in Minnesota, you're behind Justin Jefferson and you're behind Jordan Addison. In Chicago, you're behind DJ Moore and you're behind Rome Odunze, who they took in the top 10 last year. There does seem to be an opening for the Jets at the wide receiver 2 kind of position, right? You know you got Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 3-4. We brought in Tyler Johnson. We have Malachi Corley. I think Rondale Moore could be interesting because he's also a different type of wide receiver than Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is an alpha on the outside making big plays. Tyler Johnson is over 6 foot tall, right? Corley is kind of your yak guy. Rondale Moore profiles more like that, okay? He's 24 years old. He was a second-round pick, continuing the kind of young, good draft pedigree kind of guy who has shown flashes. He was with Atlanta, but had a big-time knee injury in training camp. And if you remember the Atlanta Falcons offense last year, Moore was in essence competing with Darnell Mooney to be that kind of number 2 wide receiver. And you saw Mooney went on to have a really nice season. Earlier in training camp for Atlanta, it was Rondale Moore who was above Mooney on the depth chart, okay? So he, in his last full year with Arizona, he had 40 catches, 350 yards, and a touchdown. His rookie year was really his best, 54 catches, 485 yards. He was also one of those kind of wide receivers that are used in the run game, with the end arounds, with the bubble screens, with the pop passes, right? And Garrett Wilson is not doing that for this offense. So Rondale Moore would bring a different kind of element there. And here's another piece that I think makes the Rondale Moore visit pretty interesting. The Jets wide receiver coach, Sean Jefferson, was his coach in Arizona. And as Rondale Moore was developing, going from year 1 to year 2, going from year 2 to year 3, there are a ton of positive comments that Sean Jefferson had about him, saying that he was like the winner of the offseason, that they're looking to get the ball in Rondale Moore's hands. This is a different kind of receiver. He does fit the trend, being young, being a high-level draft pick, and having shown flashes in this league. So, and you could also get him on the cheap, because he is coming off of that knee injury. You're not going to have to break the bank to go ahead and get Rondale Moore. Now, he is not like a sexy stud as your wide receiver 2 potentially, but keep an eye on Rondale Moore. He could be a fit for the Jets as they build out that wide receiver room with guys also like Tyler Johnson and guys like Malachi Corley, and maybe not a first-round draft pick like Tet McMillan, which I have been talking about here on Jets Latest, but maybe a second, third-round wide receiver to really round out that wide receiver room. But here's the other thing. There are a ton of wide receivers out there as well. I talk about it as like supply and demand. There's kind of a reason that some of these big name wide receivers haven't found deals yet, okay? At the top of the market right now, you got guys like Stephon Diggs. Hasn't even really had a visit. There's rumors that he's going to visit the Las Vegas Raiders, but the wide receiver market is cold in general, and here's why. It's pure supply and demand, people, and there is a surplus of kind of veteran wide receivers. For example, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson. These are all guys that can easily be a wide receiver 2 on any roster. Only problem is they're around 30 years old. They're either already above 30 or, in the case of Deontay Johnson, approaching 30. That's 4 right there. That doesn't even get less sexy names that are kind of stable and have produced in this league, like Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Nelson Aguilar, Tyler Boyd, Allen Robinson. I have literally just named 10 veteran wide receivers. And when there's so many options out there for teams that are shopping at wide receiver, what they're likely going to do is see if a young kid instead falls to them in the draft that can kind of do the same thing and be cheaper. And if not, then they go ahead and sign one of these other wide receivers that I've just mentioned. But because there are so many out there, there is no pressure on any of the teams to go ahead and try to spend big money to sign a wide receiver. Like I said, I think Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen are maybe the only difference makers there, but there's no reason to have to feel pressured to go ahead and sign any of these guys to big money, okay? Those guys are all also, like I said, approaching 30. That's part of why I think Rondale Moore is interesting, because he fits more of the new Jets brand, bringing in young guys who have flashed, who have something to prove, right? However, there is one more, and that is former Jet Elijah Moore. If you remember Elijah Moore a few years back, we took him out of Ole Miss with a top 3-round pick, and he would fit as well. He's only 25 years old. He, in the last couple of years with the Cleveland Browns, averaged 60 catches, about 600 yards. So more statistical production than Rondale Moore, but a similar kind of player in terms of stature, in terms of kind of the archetype of wide receiver. That one could be interesting as well. I do think Elijah Moore would command more dollars in free agency than Rondale Moore would. So keep an eye out on that, right? But that's another interesting name in the wide receiver market in free agency. But the bottom line here is that there is no pressure on the Jets because there is a surplus of wide receivers. They could also use maybe not number 7 overall, but number 42 overall for a pass catcher, whether that be the wide receiver or the tight end. There's other tight ends that could be available. We all talk about Tyler Warren and how great that is. Colston Loveland out of Michigan, Gunnar Helm out of Texas are also, solid tight ends that you could add to that room as rookies with Ruckert and Smart and really be okay. It does not have to be Tyler Warren at number 7 overall. So the bottom line here is the Jets continue their new model. The Jets continue to focus on, talented young players with stuff that would still upside in this league. And because they're looking now at wide receiver and trying to find the deals and the bargains that are on brand for them, namely Rondale Moore at wide receiver, it does make me believe that at number 7 overall, it could be Tyler Warren. And I know there's a lot of people out there, including Mel Kiper, who thinks that that is the case. But for me, what is coming clearer into focus is that the Jets feel that they will be able to grab one of the top offensive linemen in the draft at number 7 overall. I thought Will Campbell, but don't forget about Membo, who is moving up draft boards and has been a stud out of Missouri. And that gives them kind of options, flexibility, right? Because it's safe to say one of those two guys will be there at 7 so they don't get sniped, have a plan, and have that go to shreds because their guy gets taken. There are 2 offensive linemen you put on one side, Olufushanu comes back on the other, and you all of a sudden have a very good young offensive line for Justin Fields and for that run game headlined by Breece Hall. That's what I think is going on in Jets world. That is the latest on the JETS Jets. Don't forget, like this video. Please subscribe to the channel so you get updates and notifications every time we drop more content so you are always clued in to the green and white. And again, for me, Dane Martinez, the Spittin' Statistician, if you want to hear more from me about the Jets or anything, go on over to SiriusXM, the fantasy channel, number 87. I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show. FTN is a great data fantasy website with so many great tools to help you win your leagues and win that cash. And we talk about it all for 2 hours every day on SiriusXM. You could also hit me up at Spittin' Speeds on X. Ask any questions, like these videos, react, respond, and I'll be sure to hit you back. But this is another edition of Jets Latest. You are now caught up on the JETS Jets. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.